We got the Tankie Times news, comrades. My news service, Tankie Times. Iran responds. Trump, Zelensky escalate aggression. Russian SMO updates and actually existing socialist headlines. Iran army launches drone attack on U.S. bases. The Islamic Republic of Iran's army has launched fresh attacks on U.S. military installations in regional countries in retaliation for the deadly American strikes against the nation in flagrant violation of the war ending deal between the two sides. The Army's Public Relations Department announced on Thursday the firing of a massive barrage of various kamikaze drones at a Patriot missile system in Kuwait, a satellite antenna for early warnings in Qatar, and fuel depots belonging to the terrorist U.S. Army in Bahrain. It added that the operation was conducted a short time ago in response to the crime. Over the past 2 days, American aircraft have carried out a wide range of strikes against several areas across 5 Iranian provinces, targeting civilian infrastructure. At least 14 people were killed and 78 others injured in assaults, according to the Iranian Health Ministry from Press TV. We also have further reporting on Bahrain here. If you want to read more about that, hitting of Kuwait directly is kind of a Iran showing it's willing to escalate along with the U.S. escalations against them. And then we also have this here. I really like this article, so one of those that I recommend you checking out the whole article. But this I thought was such an interesting article about the architecture of deterrence and Khamenei's contributions to that. So this is the excerpt I took from it. The missile program of the Islamic Republic of Iran did not emerge from a vacuum. It was the product of a sustained and strategically guided effort that began in the darkest days of the imposed war in the 1980s, when Iraqi missiles rained down on Tehran and other Iranian cities, and Iranian defenders had little or no means to respond to the aggression. The architect of this transformation was Imam Khomeini, who, from his earliest days as the country's president during the war, recognized that Iran's survival depended on breaking free from foreign dependency and building an indigenous defense capability. Through 4 decades of unwavering support, strategic interventions, and insistence on self-reliance, the leader of the Islamic Revolution shaped what foreign military analysts now rank as one of the world's most formidable missile arsenals. His role was not merely administrative, but deeply technical and hands-on, demanding precision, accuracy, and mass production at every stage. And I thought that this segment here that was later on in the article was also very important too. One of the most consequential strategic decisions in Iran's military development was the choice to prioritize ballistic missiles over fighter aircraft. This decision, driven by Imam Khomeini's strategic vision, has been validated by the results. According to Hajizadeh, had we followed the path taken by the world, where both the East and the West primarily pursued offensive weaponry through aircraft development, now reaching 5th generation fighters, we would likely still be struggling with 3rd generation technology. No matter what we did, we would always be behind them, with a 50-year gap. Instead of chasing a technological path where Iran would perpetually lag behind, Imam Khomeini guided the country towards asymmetric investment strategy. Iran would develop capabilities that could effectively counter threats without attempting to match the enemy's air superiority. The IRGC was directed to focus on missiles, while aircraft development was left to the Army. This division of labor allowed for concentrated investment in a field where Iran could achieve genuine parity. The results speak for themselves. In 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Iran was offered advanced Russian missiles at bargain prices. Military officials pushed to buy them, but Imam Khomeini forbade the purchases, insisting on indigenous development. Press TV. Love that article. Just a little Juche and Songun. Here we go here. No surprise, but still needs to be reported. Trump says he supports Ukraine's long-range attacks inside Russia. He also goes beyond that as well. President Trump, heaped praise on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the NATO summit in Ankara on Wednesday, expressed support for Ukraine's long-range attacks inside Russia, and said he would allow Ukraine to produce Patriot missile interceptors. When asked about Ukraine's strikes on Russian oil refineries, the president said, "It's an escalation, but it's also an escalation that could help lead to an end." Ukraine's long-range drone attacks rely on intelligence provided by US and Ukrainian officials. So by the US, and Ukrainian officials told the Financial Times this week that the Ukrainian military was able to strike multiple Russian oil refineries recently because US intelligence has allowed it to find the optimal flight path for its drones to get through Russia's air defenses. Discussing the Patriot missiles, Trump told Zelensky, "We're going to give a license to you to make Patriot missiles. That's pretty cool. This way you can complain that we're not giving them enough." I said, "Make them yourself. We haven't informed the company of this yet, but it'll work out all right." President Trump's approval of Ukraine's manufacturing Patriots marked another escalation of U.S. support for Ukraine and Russia. And Russia will almost certainly attempt to target any Patriot factories that are established in Ukrainian territory. Overall, Trump spoke very highly of Zelensky, a reversal from the start of his administration when the two clashed during a contentious Oval Office meeting. "We've actually developed a good relationships. It's hard to believe," Trump said, adding that Zelensky has done an amazing job and been very effective in the war. Antiwar.com reports. By the way, everybody, make sure you're following the cutest stream on all of Twitch and Kick and perhaps other places as well, if I'm not mistaken. Street Cat Love. I know that videos get uploaded to YouTube for sure. Patriots with a 2% intercept rate. Might as well light the money on fire. I mean, that's the thing though. Ukraine has become like this gangster, like mafioso like state where like people are just making money and assassinating each other and involved in all kinds of like operations overseas. Like with the whole incident that we read about yesterday with, where was it, Morocco or something? Where it seems like there was like a Ukrainian agent involved in some kind of terrorist action there, and then another Ukrainian agent assassinates that agent, and then they get arrested in Ukraine. Anyway, we have a statement here from Dmitry that I wanted to highlight for you, which is that Russia, of course, is fully aware of the U.S. actively supplying weapons to Kiev. Washington is actively continuing to supply weapons and military technologies to Kiev. Moscow is well aware of this and has no delusions, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said at a briefing. As for Patriot, yes, it is an obvious fact. The United States generally continues to supply weapons and military technologies to Ukraine. This is indeed true, and we know it. We are in no way delusional. Russian President Vladimir Putin is well aware of this, the Kremlin representative noted. The decision for the U.S. to transfer a license for the production of Patriot systems to Ukraine was announced yesterday by U.S. President Donald Trump at a meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry. And then we also have Trump's proposals on Ukrainian airspace closure represents something new for Moscow. Just like any other proxy for a global terror. I mean, hey, Scroot, Zelensky said himself that he wanted to turn Ukraine into a big Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump's statements regarding a possible closure of the Ukrainian airspace are new developments. This topic has not been discussed before and needs to be thoroughly studied, Russian presidential spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Thursday. He said that the proposal voiced by the American president stipulates NATO presence on Ukrainian territory and contradicts one of the set objectives of the Russian special military operations. These are new sentiments. There have been no statements of this kind made before, Peskov said at the news briefing. No one had previously raised the issue of closing the airspace. In any case, this would imply operational activities by NATO member states, armed forces over Ukrainian territory. This is precisely what the special military operation is intended to prevent, he continued. This proposal needs to be studied. It definitely needs to be thoroughly analyzed to understand how this issue has been worked out, between whom it has been worked out, etc. He added, speaking at a meeting with Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Turkey's Ankara, U.S. President Trump stated that potential U.S. security guarantees for Kiev may include measures to close Ukraine's airspace. Oh no, not lintweed. So that's our geopolitical updates. Did I see news about Ukraine and the DPRK POW? It depends on what one you're talking about. Why does the West hate Russia? Aren't they both capitalists, or is it more that money can be made off the conflict? I'm so confused in this area. I mean, it's not so simple to just be like, yeah, Russia is a capitalist country, but it's not so simple as that, really, because you kind of have to ask which direction a country is headed. And Russia is really headed towards the east, towards a socialist future. Because it is, at least in its current configuration, because it is fighting a battle against U.S. imperialism. And a battle against U.S. imperialism inherently strengthens the forces of labor, the forces of the global proletariat. Right? So, I mean, I would reckon that is probably the case. Not to sound rude or anything, but yeah, I would reckon that probably everything you know about about Russia is indeed much like everybody's knowledge about DPRK, actually, which was the slip of the tongue, is that, Russia is, think about it, the villain in all the movies. It's, it's like there's a reason why there's that anti-Russian propaganda. Okay, I'll tell you, there's a couple sources that I like. One of the funniest streamers actually that I do appreciate that raids us sometimes here, Bunker Cat, did a video just yesterday about Putin's pivot to Asia that I thought was actually kind of cool, kind of interesting. But this video here by Radhika Desai that we watched the other day, I think is really enlightening. This one, it's an hour long. We watched this the other week. And this video is all about Russia's economy isn't what the West told you. And it discusses, like, it discusses how the Russian economy works and kind of like the direction the Russian economy is headed, and why Russia in many ways is probably looking is like moving in a direction like China ultimately, especially as it gets closer and closer in international relations to China. Um, it had like because you have to take into account not like Putin and these individual actors necessarily, but what politics they represent, what mass line they represent, right? And like I pointed out before, is in this strange position because of the experience that Russia had with Yeltsin and compradors that were really ready to sell Russia out to the West. Putin has much stronger support of the masses because he reflects a certain trend of resisting Western US imperialism. Not as an individual, but that's the politics that the political realm that he is a part of, right? And that's why as long as that is in place, we defend Russia. And that's also why Russia like sends aid to countries around the world. Like it is in Africa right now fighting helping African countries resist neocolonialism. That's just the fact, right? Yeah, I mean, sure, Putin, you could say Putin's not a comrade, but he's not an ally of the West either. But it's like in a sense, who would be the replacement, right? And also, again, we got to always caution people against like great man theory because Putin isn't the only force in Russia. There's tremendous political influence from like the Russian Communist Party as well, for example. Right? So you have to take into account all the social forces. And that's what I always kind of like remind people of as well. Plus, he told that billionaire guy to give him back his pen. That was pretty epic. I mean, I hope that's a start. I have done a couple of videos on it as well too. Um I don't know if you've ever seen my YouTube channel. I've got it right here. I did a video just the other day that's called Russia Phobia Relies on the Denial of the Source of Global Fascism. I did a video called that the other day, which is again trying to debunk the bullshit about Russia. So that there's another one you might make use of as well. Yeah, I mean modern Russia in my opinion it's because of the position it occupies in global politics, it is the duty of communists to defend it. It plays a progressive anti-imperialist force in the world. I say that like without any shadow of a like irony or whatever the fuck people would accuse me of doing. And that's another one too talking about Yeltsin. I think great man theory is a problem seen in Nepal too, where the prime minister where with the new prime minister, but also don't know how revolution can function without some organized level of centralization. Yeah. I mean, that's why you need the party and the correct theory, right? That's why you need political scientists, professional revolutionaries who have the correct theory and are able to figure out how to guide the masses in that struggle. Okay, we have now we're on to the socialist headlines. We have Lao. The health ministry is pledging to upgrade hospitals, strengthen rural healthcare services, etc. You can statistically prove it. Russia doesn't have the import export of finance capital like imperialist countries do. it's minuscule by comparison. Yep. Yeah, because I mean, imperialism is a global order, right? So many people, like I'd say before, get imperialism wrong and think it means like when big country does something. There's so much pushback against Russia in the Ukraine, um, America quagmire. I rarely hear the anti-fascist take on Donbass. Like there's the Juche gang only talking in depth. Well, this is exactly why I did like one reason why I was so keen to form the team that we have now, and why we're kind of very selective about about our admission of new streamers and creators into our team. You might not know this, chat, but we have created a team and we're trying to flesh it out into like what else we can do with this. But we've created the team Tank Tube here. So we've got Ugopnik on here. We've got Collective TV, who is new historically, is going to be joining us very soon. Madeline Pendleton, Lennon Smash, Complaining Laney, Monopua, Unsettling Empire, who has done some amazing work on other social media platforms. Dave Legan, Comrade Virgo, Rob Russo, and myself, all part of this team. And our goal with making this team was essentially streamers that tend to not focus on um, bourgeois electoral political circus, other than maybe we laugh at it once in a while, but also on the right side of like Ukraine being a fucking fascist country, right? Like the thing that upsets me is like the way that usurper and usurped is transformed when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. Right? There was ethnic cleansing in Ukraine. It's true. But it wasn't committed by Russia. It's been stopped by Russia. And Ukraine still attempts it, even in in Donbass regions to this day, right? They still attack civilian infrastructure. That's pretty much all they attack, like I've explained before. So there has been ethnic cleansing campaigns, there has been genocidal campaigns in Ukraine, perpetrated by the fascist Ukrainian government installed by the United States. That's exactly why Crimea voted to leave and wanted to rejoin the Russian Federation, which they did in huge numbers, in like 90% turnout and 80% in favor of rejoining the Russian Federation. Donbass, they initially declared independence, and then they used their new independence to ask for Russian assistance, and then after that decide that they want to join the Russian Federation as a protected region. And the thing about that too is it make like when Russia refers to it as Russian regions, there's nothing wrong with that. Right? People think that's proof that Russians trying to colonize Ukraine, which is nonsense. First of all, they're essentially the same people. Right? Can I link this article? Wait, this my whole newspaper is available right there. My news is available for everybody to make use of. Feel free to use it on your media or whatever. I put a speech in here from yesterday's UN United Nations General Assembly. I recommend you check that out. So wild to me to convey truths to my boomer Democrat mom, aunt, and stepdad. The boomers are so programmed they can't accept that. Nope, no worries, Scroot. It's no judgment against you. It's for the comfort of chat. I know we're all working on all different areas of our lives, so it's no judgment in any way. And yeah, I know how that goes, trust me. They want to like so many like I mean my mom will say all the time I'm too old to worry about that stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you got a grandson, you know. That's usually the one I use. Kiari, welcome in. Russia and China, I think, face similar issues in the sense that the monarchies that used to rule and did do violent imperialism in various regions are the same regions that communist parties inherited. Yes, absolutely. Um, I think some resentment from indigenous groups is understandable, even if the communists liberated them. I don't know Russia as well, but my feeling is that CPC has a responsibility to be extra sensitive regarding these regions and overcorrective away from actions that seem imperialist. Absolutely. Or seem oppressive or tyrannical or whatever you want to say, right? Absolutely. And I think China does set a good example in how to do that. I think USSR did for a time as well. I actually think one of the major mistakes of USSR is its failure to carry that forward. That right to succession and stuff. Like even though the communists would oppose succession and would support and vocally support like the anti-successionists, they would still at the same time fight for the right to succeed to exist, right? And like that's part of it. And like the breaking up of the common term was a correct thing to do, but then there was still a tendency, especially after Stalin died and the kind of Trotskyist clique took over again, there was a tendency to essentially go back to like the practice of the Comintern, where Russia would act as like a center and it would almost have this expectation, and vice versa. There was an the other parties of the republic were kind of like expecting to follow Russia, and this led to like this appearance of like this appearance of Russification or whatever that allowed the imperialists to take advantage of that and stoke anti-Russia national sentiment. Whereas if it had respected those regions and respected their independent development better, then the imperialists would not have had that option through which to undermine the USSR. And we see them trying to do that with China, right? We see them trying to use that same strategy with China, but because China did not fall into those similar mistakes, it has been able to fight against that. It's this is actually something that Kim Jong Il talks about in Fundamentals of Revolutionary Party Building. It's really good. And like speaking of what you're just talking about there, it reminds me of these quotes by Deng Xiaoping here. These two. I'm gonna read these two just because I want you to see like when Deng Xiaoping becomes leader, there tends to be this focus on economism purely. And we have to remember that Deng Xiaoping was not purely an economist, right? He was a communist. So he was also studied and understood the ideological struggle, he understood the cultural struggle, and he understood the economic struggle, right? He understood those aspects and he understood how they connected. And and like part of what he did was not only fight for these economic reforms, but also fight. And part of the reason for fighting for the economic reforms was also fighting for respecting of the other nationalities of China and making sure that there isn't this imbalance and that they actively fight against an imbalance. And that's why like this quote here is taken from him. He says, historically, China's minority nationalities have been estranged to a high degree from the Han nationality. As a result of our work done in the past, and particularly over the past 6 months, this state of affairs has been changing gradually. But we still cannot say that we have cleared up this estrangement. Only after a long time, through examining the facts, will we be able to put an end to the historical estrangement between the minority nationalities and the Han nationality, caused by Han chauvinism. We will have to make efforts for a long period of time before we can eliminate this estrangement. We should convince the various minority nationality people that politically, all nationalities within China's boundaries are truly equal. that their living standards can be improved and their cultural level can be raised. By culture, we mean mainly culture of each nationality. Unless we succeed in the three aspects of work, it will be impossible to iron out the historical estrangement or rift. The People's Republic of China is a multinational country, and only by ending this national estrangement and enlisting the concentrated efforts of the various nationalities can we form a truly great happy family of the Chinese nation. The conditions are present for eliminating this estrangement. The policy of Han chauvinism adopted by the reactionary regimes of the past deepened the national estrangement, but the nationality policy stipulated in the common program adopted at the political consultative conference will certainly end this estrangement and bring about a great unity of various nationalities. Thank you for abandoning Sinchel. Everybody, thanks Sinchel for the mod work that she gave you.
Cinnamon, y'all.
It's up to us to rescue Deng Xiaoping's image. It's why I say market socialism is not capitalism. Market socialism is socialism. Could you get a link? Yes. How can I link this? Oh, I will do what I often say I should do. I'll go to my Twitter and I'll put it like this. Wow, why did it type like that? There. Okay. There, now it's on here for y'all. And I will also... I'll also post this in the Juche Gang Embassy of the People's Republic of Fork, which is the official home of the Juche Gang community. So all you have to do is join the People's Republic of Fork, go to the Passport of Registry section, and make sure you click on the DPRK flag, and then you'll be able to see my chat in there. Deng simply being seen as a capitalist who liberated China's economy is such an embarrassingly simple-minded take, but that is still the common Western opinion. Absolutely. And I hope that my comrades will join me in fighting against that. It's one thing that I've said is I think one way we can do that is by getting away from this idea that it's state capitalism or something like this, right? Like that's kind of like an outdated term that Lenin used back then. In a way that what that term I think does is kind of like undersells the length of this of socialism, because socialism is an interim period, a revolutionary period, a transitionary period between capitalism and a higher phase of communism. So what, like, this idea of oh well, how can the market socialist stage last for 100 years? The market socialist stage will last as long as the masses deem it necessary for it to last, right? And as long as it serves building the socialist revolution. And that's the thing that I think that's why we need to get away from the state capitalist and instead we need to use market socialism. That's what it is. It's market socialism. It's a market that is that all the game that like the economic contribution to society from that market is actually used to serve the people. in a way that markets in a capitalist society could never do. Yeah, I guess it's still useful to know state capitalism refers to market socialism. Yeah, I mean, by all means, in Marxist circles. I do think when we explain China's economy to just like people who know nothing about it, we can explain that market socialism. And what's great about market socialism is we can explain how much more stable and secure it is for small businesses, for like the small proprietors, right? For the for people who do actually play some role in who can play some role in developing some productive forces and employing people, right? What matters is that the socialist law ensures that those workers are treated fairly, and then the state takes care of their other needs, their health care, their clothing, their or whatever else. So yeah, I really think we reading Deng Xiaoping is a very enlightening thing to do, because you realize that it wasn't so much a struggle of Mao against Deng Xiaoping. It was a struggle of the Gang of Four against Marxist Leninists who understood that Marxism Leninism had to be applied creatively and by the people themselves. It couldn't just be something that the party dictated to the people. And that's really the difference. Deng Xiaoping was much more of like understood that socialism, the primary core of socialism is serving the people. Like that the people are my god, as Kim Il Sung said, right? And through the party serving the people, making the people responsible for society, making the people the masters of society, they will build socialism. Especially when there's a party there to guide them correctly through the thorny path of revolution. That's like the two ingredients: the party guidance, but the masses have to be the masters of the revolution. And that, again, that's something that in USSR they failed to understand. That was the other aspect that USSR failed to understand: the focus on ideological education, transformation of humanity, and ensuring the masses as the masters of politics through like the mass line. Instead, Khrushchev acted like they already achieved socialism, and now they just need to sit with their laurels on socialism, and eventually everyone will become communist minded people. When every other communist country understood that you had to have active ideological struggle, and that socialism just marks the beginning of the revolution, not the end of a revolution. I have a piece here from Vietnam. Vietnam, Laos strengthen border defense friendship. A series of activities highlighting the political, defense, and humanitarian dimensions of the Third Vietnam Lao Border Defense Friendship Exchange took place on July 9th at the Nang Yen, Vietnam, or Nam O, Bolic Sham Si Lao International Border Gate, further reinforcing the two countries' special friendship and shared commitment to building a border of peace, friendship, cooperation, and development. Let's go, Lao and Vietnam. The Vietnamese and Lao high-level delegations were led by Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Defense General Phan Van Giang and his Lao counterpart General Cam Liang Othe Quezon, respectfully. Love that for them. I included two articles that you might be interested in today's paper. One on Nambia's evolving partnership with China and South Sudan, 15 years of friendship for peace and development, highlighting some of their trade relations over the years. Do you know how this relates to the NEP and the plan for democratic renewal? the new economic policy is essentially like Stalin recognizing the period of market socialism for the USSR, right? So yeah, I mean it's not wrong to describe it as an NEP. However, it's wrong to describe the NEP as a capitalist period. That's the thing that so many Marxists get wrong. Because what matters when it comes to defining a state is whether the proletariat is the ruler of that state or not. That should be the ultimate criteria, right? I have CPC's governance philosophy for national stability and prosperity. In his speech commemorating the 105th anniversary of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, unveiled what keeps this century-old party vibrant and thriving. The CPC's ability to surmount formidable challenges and forge historic triumphs over the past 105 years lies in its unique political advantages. At the very soul of this capacity is its people-centered approach. Deeply embedded in the theories and practices of both the party and the state, this approach remains the master key of understanding China's governance success. This people centered philosophy draws from diverse intellectual wells. It is rooted in the Marxist view that people are the creators of history. It inherits the traditional Chinese wisdom that the people are the foundation of the state. The state will have peace only when the people all lead a happy, stable life, and distills the invaluable experiences forged through China's extraordinary journey of revolution, construction, and reform. Ultimately, this philosophy is crystallized into Xi's profound insight. The country is its people, and the people are the country. This enduring philosophy underscores the supreme and central role of the people, reaffirming and reaffirming that serving the people wholeheartedly remains the CPC's fundamental purpose. That's Juche, baby.
Juche is what's happening on this planet, y'all.
That's Juche. Okay, and I've got two from DPRK for you to finish our news off for today. Outstanding leader who eliminated the way ahead of progressive mankind. This is from DPRK. Now our people and other progressives impressively recollect the whole life of President Kim Il-sung, who devoted his all to the global cause of independence. The president founded the immortal Juche idea to implant the soul of Juche and faith in the independence in the minds of the world's progressive people, and powerfully arouse them to the implementation of the global cause of independence. The president met several times with the General Secretary of the National Executive Committee of the American Popular Revolutionary Alliance of Peru, and his party, who paid a visit to DPRK in the period between the late June and early July 1983. The Union was a progressive political party which was striving to find a way for building a new independent and prospering society. But it was suffering difficulties and ordeals due to the vicious moves of the imperialist forces and domestic reactionaries. Reading his agony, the president gave him precious instructions to be held fast to in the struggle for building a new independent society. The president said that they should not fully accept others, although it is so good. He continued that all the problems arising in the revolution and construction should be solved in one's own style and meet the actual situation of one's own country and its people's interests. Then the president indicated the ways for solving all problems arising in achieving independence development, such as building the self-supporting national economy, foodstuff, self-sufficiency, and effecting of South-South cooperation. Receiving the precious instructions by the president, and visiting delegation members greatly admired his rare wisdom and foresightedness. The president led the cause of independence of the popular masses, the socialist cause to victory, in the late 1990s. At that time, socialist countries were collapsed one after another, and the people, who were so bewildered that they did not know what to do. However, the imperialists vociferated about the victory of capitalism, yelling for delight. And not a few people lost their faith in the cause of independence for humanity and gave up the struggle. Just then, President Kim Il-sung led the progressives to advance along the road of socialism with a firm faith. The president met the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Portugal when he visited the DPRK in March 1991. At that time, the Portuguese party leader earnestly asked President Kim Il-sung if socialism could not defeat capitalism. The president said that it was the reactionary theory that socialism could not develop, and that socialist society was superior to the capitalist one, and had greater possibility of developing productivity than that. Then he continued that East European countries collapsed in a day because the socialist ruling parties got out of touch with the popular masses, taking to flunkyism following big countries, and lapsing into subjectivity and bureaucracy in their work. The president also met personages and led them to steadily advance along the road for the cause of global independence, explaining the inevitability of the victory of the socialist cause. Thanks to the president's outstanding leadership, the cause of independence for humanity could advance along the road of its development, overcoming all the challenges of history. The great leader, Comrade Kim Il-sung, is indeed the greatest man who ushers in the origin of the era of independence and brought about epochal changes by founding the Juche idea, which illumes the way ahead for mankind. Rodong Sinman. I've been weighing that. I've been considering it. I haven't wanted to get it too big, and my problem with that is I've kind of kept it to like the forerunners, if you will. You know? People as a foundation of the state directly comes from the Confucianism. It's been interesting to see how China has in recent years more embraced their ancient history. What the heck? Rob Rousseau! Oh my god, welcome in, comrades. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see y'all. You're just in time for reading Stalin in a little bit. We got a Rousseau raid. Robbers.
Juche is what's happening on this planet, y'all.
Welcome in, robbers. We were just doing a bit of DPRK news. I just finished praising Kim Il-sung. So if you've got those Rob Kim Il-sung emotes, now is the time to drop them into my chat. Juche is what's happening on this planet, y'all. I do have an ad break coming up in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So if you like what you see already, think about supporting the stream and avoiding that ad break that's coming. Otherwise, we'll still be here.
I've got some
We'll be here waiting for you.
Change your whole way of thinking.
Ben Bang Boom, thank you so much for the subby, comrade. Appreciate that. Hell yeah. Yeah, I was just doing my newsletter. If you don't know me, I'm Leaping Larry. I'm on a stream team with Rob Rousseau. It's called TankTube.